CMG out for a drive today, and it was a really great day. Nice drive, the car ran well. We were starting to get on it. I figured I'd do a 0 to 60 test, and halfway through the test it started to sound like it was starved on fuel, and so we figured out that we had a problem with a vacuum building up in the tank. So I just ran the car for a little while to see if we can reproduce the problem. There you go. Do you hear that? So what that tells me is that this device right here, vacuum canister, this vacuum canister right here is either clogged, or the line going back to the canister up by the engine is clogged. So what we're going to do today is we're going to troubleshoot this vacuum problem and see if we can get a good vapor channel to run through this vacuum canister and prevent that issue. When the tank gets a vacuum in it, then eventually the pump gets starved for fuel, and it's equivalent to a vapor lock. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and take this thing off and try to see if we can run some pressure through it and see if it's clogged or not. All right, so got this thing disconnected, and I unplugged the top hose. This is the hose that goes up into the front, the canister in the front. This actually comes around the top up here, and it actually loops around. I don't know if you can see, there's a little loop right there, and then it comes back, and then it goes down to here. This right here will go to the front, the canister up in the front. So let's check that hard line. I'm going to go up and disconnect the canister in the front and see if we have it's able to run air through this line, and if that's the problem, then the canister in the front is the issue. All right, so I've been able to trace this line, and I'm able to get air to pass through this line right here. So it's got to go from here down. So I'm going to have to get up underneath the car and track that line, see if there's a pinch or some sort of degradation in the line, and then if it's just clogged, we're going to have to figure out how to get that unclogged. All right, so quick cursory look at these lines. This right here is the main wiring harness that goes to the trunk. This right here is a brake line. This is the thicker one, is the positive cable for the battery brake line. This thicker one over here is the fuel line. So it's this second one right here that we're checking. And it doesn't look like there's any pinches or anything that is, mechanically constricting. See, there's a little cross part right here. None of that looks like it's been violated or pinched. Goes under here, goes over here. From right here it goes up, and it's like 2 feet from here to the canister. This right here is the brake line. It has a little union on it. But this line right here is the line that we're looking at. And I don't see anything that would show a pinch or anything like that. So we're going to go ahead and get some solvent into this line and feed it back that way. I don't want to spray solvent and get it into the engine compartment, but we'll put a little carb cleaner in there and try to get it under pressure, let it set for a while, and see if we can just get the air to flow in this little vent tube. All right, moving on. All right, so I've tried a few things. First off, I ran some carburetor cleaner on in here, let it soak for a while, reapplied it a few times. The level never really went down, so it didn't progress. So then I put a cloth over this, and from the other side I tried to run 150 pounds of pressure through the air line, and still nothing. It got absolutely no movement. So next thing here, I put a piece of copper wire from some Romex and pushed it down there. The Romex was able to proceed. It got down to this bend right here, but once it got to the flat, it was able to turn the bend because I was able to measure the distance. Right about here, it couldn't get any further. So I think what we got here is rust or some kind of sediment that's sitting in this flat section. Over time, it has just, you know, clogged it up. When I rebuilt this canister, there was a bunch of rust in that too, so that's very believable. So I think what I'm going to do immediately, you know, the best thing to do would be just replace this line altogether. But before I get to that, since this does connect with a rubber hose when it gets to the canister, I'm going to go ahead and cut this. Probably, where's the line? Here it is. Here's this line right here. I'm going to cut this right here. Whoops, fingers. I'm going to cut this right here, and I'm going to run a fuel line, a rubber hose, if it's clear, from here up to. But you know, after I cut it, if it's still not clear, then we're going to have to pull that line out altogether. It's just not worth struggling with it. But you know, it's more likely that this will be clear because it's vertical, and that this will be, you know, horizontal. It would have collected rust over time and clogged itself up. So I'm going to cut it right here, and then we'll do another test to see if it's clear from here. And if that's the case, then that'll be my solution without having to run an extra, you know, whole line all the way up to there. So let's go ahead and cut that off and see if we're clear. Nope, that wasn't the problem. I'm going to have to replace that whole line right there. I cut it and it's still clogged. So that'll be kind of a fun task. I think what we'll do is we'll bend it into sections and replace sections as we go. I think it's probably just the big long flat line that we were looking at underneath the car. So I'll have to bend these back into shape, and then make a duplicate version from here to there, and then run the flat line as a new line, and then we'll move forward from there. So I gotta go to the parts store and buy some new line that I can bend it into shape. All right, so I'm going to start cutting out some of this line. Now, again, this right here, this is the one that I'm going to be cutting that's clogged. This one right here. And there's a nice straight section right here. It goes along the positive battery terminal. And this is the wire right here, or the line that I want to break. Now, this is the brake line. I don't want to mess with that one, but this one right here is the one I want to cut. So there's a number of bends that I want to avoid if I can. Now this is the lowest point, so if it was a matter of liquid that dried up, the clog could just be right in here in this low point. If it's a matter of the flat spots, then I'm going to check this. So it's really easy to buy straight line at the auto parts store. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out this straight line, and I'm going to test from here to there. You know, if this is the section, then we're golden. I don't have to mess with any of this. But then the next thing I'm going to check is from here down to here, because this is another big long straight stretch that goes all the way to the back here. So we'll see what parts that I can get into, and what parts I can clean, and what parts need to be replaced altogether. But instead of cutting the whole thing out, I'm just going to take it out in sections and test sections as we go. And you know, if the last section, well, it's always going to be the last section, because once you find it, you're done. But you know, the idea here is to replace as little as possible and minimize the effort. So, all right, I'm going to get cutting. We'll cut it right up in here, and that way I only have to deal with the one mounting point right here. The less bolts to take out, which are also going to be difficult to deal with. Thankfully, this one just has one bolt, and there's a little tab right here. I don't have to mess with that. So just one bolt, and then we'll pull this little holder thing out. So that's first thing. Let's cut this thing off back down here. Get that holder off. All right. So as with so many other decisions, when it comes to working on the car, quite often it comes down to price versus availability. This little section of pipe, this is actually a 6-foot section of pipe, it's only $14. So instead of piecemealing it and just doing little sections and trying to find the clog, I'm just going to replace the whole thing and use my bender and bend this thing into shape. So I'll go over how to bend it and how to make a pipe out of a straight section of pipe here. This is a 6-foot section of pipe. If you had bought this from Moss, it would be $56. It's only $14 at AutoZone. So, you know, do your due diligence for things like this that are consumable, easy to find. You don't necessarily have to go online to find those. So anyway, that task has changed. I'm going to get up underneath here and cut out what I'm going to cut out, and then we'll try to make it match. Alright, so this is where I'm going to make my first cut. You can see I put a little paint stirrer in here just to make sure that when I make my cut, I'm not going to affect any of the other brake lines or the positive battery cable here. It's going to go through, hit the wood, and then when the shadings change, I'll know I'm all the way through. I'm going to go past this little elbow because I think this is the lowest spot and most likely the place where it's clogged. When I get this cut, we'll do a test, and then I'll take out the rest of this line and then we'll try to match it up. And I think we're probably going to have to replace it in 2 sections anyway, because when you go further up, it goes back on itself, and it'll be really hard to fish that through. So we'll probably end up making 2 sections anyway. But let's go ahead and cut this. Now on the other side where I cut it, I made a mark so that you can do a better orientation. You can figure out which way it's going to go. In this case, I won't think I have to do that because, you know, I can just make a scratch, and this this material, this undercoating will be equal to making a mark. So anyway, it'll just make it easier for you to orient them when you get it back in place. All right, let's go ahead and cut this. Now, I keep saying let's go ahead and do it, right? You know, last video I did, my Dremel head died, but this time I'm cutting it with my vibrating saw. It's a lot less likely to, you know, to careen off and hit something else. It's very easy to control. This has got a metal bit in it, and I'm just going to give it a little zing, and off it will go. All right, let's get going. All right, so I went all the way from the canister in the front all the way to the connector in the back, and it turned out that the clog was right in this, right the first 2 inches, right after the fitting. There was a big bunch of rust inside this little U right here. Now, just to clarify, the reason why they put all these loops and U's in here is to capture liquid fuel and only allow vapors to get back to the front of the engine. So this goes in a little like under your sink. It has a little P-trap. This is like kind of like a P-trap. It's intended to catch liquid fuel that may have condensed in the line and keep it in here. Well, in this case, it caused a bunch of rust to also develop in there. This little P-trap was right under the trunk, right at the fitting. I've already cut the little flange off of here, and I'm going to reuse this fitting with the flange on the replacement piece that I have. So after cutting up all those sections were probably good. I'll verify them and replace the ones that need to be replaced. But this turned out to be where the clog was, just 2 inches away from the end. What a frustration! But learn from me. This little P-trap is probably where you need to look first if you have a problem with your vapor line going from the gas tank. All right, let's get back into the reassembly phase here. All right, so this is my little bender here, and the idea here is you can set different thicknesses of tubing in here, and all you do is just pull that little lever right there, and it will measure the degrees of arc that it will put on there. This first bend that I'm going to be doing is not 180 degrees. I'd say that's a little outside that, so we'll bend it to 90, and then tweak it a little bit more to go the other direction, but you know, the idea here is that in order to make a bend on pipe, you need to basically stretch the outside and shrink the inside. And so what this does is it keeps it from deforming and bending widthwise. Once it starts to flatten, the outside edge gets thicker, and then it will flatten. But if you bend it inside a groove like this, then that won't have an opportunity to get any thicker, and so the metal will deform on the outside and shrink on the inside. So let's go ahead and get this thing bent, and then start bending this in all the different directions so we can get these pieces put back together. Quick footnote, if you have a fitting to put on here, make sure you put the fitting on before you do the bending, because the fitting won't slide on it once it's bent, and it's certainly easier to bend a pipe than it is to straighten it. So learn from me, I just screwed that up, but I was able to recover and get this thing back on by straightening it out. But that was not easy. So if you have a footing to put, or a fitting to put on the end, make sure you get it on there first, and then do your bends. Whew. All right, I think that first bend looks good. It's about the right length, right shape. Let's go ahead and get the next one. All right, there's my first section. Pretty happy with that. Some of these subtle bends, you don't have to put through the bender. You can pretty much just bend those with your thumb. You just have to be very careful to go slow and make little movements. When you feel it moving, just give it, you know, let it move slowly. So I think that's going to work just fine. All right, so let's get this cut off and move on to the next section. As I add the sections back on, I'm going to check to make sure that they're open and clear, because who knows, maybe there was more than one clog. All right, so there you go. Here's my little P-trap in place right here. This is the piece that I just bent. It goes over and meets up with the battery box right there. There's a strap connector that holds it in place, and then it comes down right here, and that's where I'm going to meet up with the old piece of hose. And I've already deburred the end of that line, and I'm just going to connect them with a piece of rubber hose. So let's move on to the next one. I've already confirmed that it's not clogged. Alright, there you go. Oops, I don't know if you can see. There's our union. That's a snug piece of rubber hose. We don't have to worry about even putting a connector on that. This little area right here is kind of a Jenga stack. You got to get everything all in the right order. It matches up with that little bushing just right. Now we just need to put it all together back up there, which you can see the old line is still hanging there. Just need to clean them off and deburr them and reconnect. Alright, so testing as I go. I know that from the tank to here I'm clear, but from here to the front I'm still not clear. So I have another clog, and I suspect it's right in this little U right here. It's a low spot. The rest is pretty flat, and it goes up to the engine from there. So I think I'm going to cut it right in here somewhere. I'll cut it right here, and that'll make it so easy for me to replace this section right here. Let's get to cutting and see if we can find where the hole is, or where the clog is. All right, so this is the down section that comes down from the engine, and it has a clog somewhere in here. I can't get fluid to go through there. It's clogged here, but this is the little part that goes underneath the cross member, and it's also clogged. So I feel better about finding a clog in that P-trap, because I thought that I'd cut all this line up and the only clog was at the back, but it turns out there's multiple clogs. So I have enough line. I bought the 6-foot section of line for $14, and I reused the section of line that was, I mean, it should be good, yeah. And so I think we're going to be okay as far as having enough line to make this work. So gotta cut this up and bend it up and see what we can get back all the way back to the engine. Alright, so that's a nice looking piece of line. This is the part that goes up to the engine. Actually, this part goes up to the engine compartment up here, and this part here will connect to this. This is the little piece that goes over the cross member, and I was able to clean this one out, so I don't need to make another piece for this one. and I can save this last section here for dressing up the engine compartment really nice without having too many connectors up there. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and lay this in place and see where I need to cut it on in the engine compartment, and then we'll connect this cross piece here, and then I'll have a end-to-end clear vacuum line from the it's actually a vent line from the gas tank all the way up to the charcoal canister. All right, and there's the last section installed right here. Goes up here to the canister right here. So let's go ahead and get the car started and get down off the jacks and get it started and see if we can see that we solved the problem. That's the whole exercise, right? Got to accomplish something. All right, so we got it running for a little while. Let's see what we get out of that gas tank. We'll go ahead and switch this off. Let's see what happens when we open the gas tank. Aha, look at that. No vacuum. I'm going to call that problem solved. There you go. For more videos on this kind of troubleshooting and troubleshooting the troubleshooting, just make sure you subscribe. I got a lot more work to do. When I was under the car, I found some suspension problems, and I'm getting a bit of a drip right in the transmission, so we'll have to figure out what that is. All right, so make sure you subscribe and follow the progress of the project. Cheers.